Welcome to The Driven Entrepreneur, where we sit down with visionaries, trailblazers, and entrepreneurs and discover why and how they do what they do. We'll get the backstory, plus plenty of life and business lessons along the way. Here's your host, Matt Brauning.
Hey, this episode is brought to you by my very own NLP practitioner course. I've been teaching neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, for nearly 15 years. It is the most powerful tool for communication on the planet, and it can be yours today. For a very limited time, I'm giving away my entire NLP course workbook for free. Go to nlpwithmatt.com. All the patterns, all the tools, and the techniques of NLP in the complete course workbook, the same one that we use to teach our live certification classes, yours free. nlpwithmatt.com. Get it today. Let's get back to the show. What's up? What's up, entrepreneurs? Hey, it's Matt Brauning, Driven Entrepreneur, and we're back in the saddle again. And, this week I have had some interesting things happening in my life. We have this, this little wiener dog, a dachshund, dachshund, whatever you want to call him, little mini wiener dog. His name's Hudson. And, entrepreneur life is, for a lot of this year, I've been home a ton more with my family. So we're going on dog walks. We're going to the dog park and, just kind of hanging out. And I realized that when he was a puppy, we were training him pretty well. I watched a lot of Dog Whisperer. We've had dogs before. I thought I was a pretty decent, dog. I understand dog psychology somewhat. And we're doing all the right things. But then little by little, he started getting really finicky. And he started being a little bit, aggressive or, with certain puppies and different things. And now he's becoming this really annoying, whiny dog. And we're trying to figure out what to do. So this week, I hope that if you have a pet, or if you ever will have a pet, if you have a dog, if you have a kid who wants a dog, this week is for you. I invited on someone that I met at a conference that I was just so blown away by. This person is an Army veteran. He's a dog trainer, and he has been training in the military, training elite Army canines. And he's now gone on to train over 3,000 civilian dogs. And it's a very interesting process. My guest, Ryan Matthews, is not just an inspirational speaker and a dog trainer and an author and a decorated veteran, but he also is now combining using the dog training skills to help veterans and other people going through traumas recover from PTSD using dog training techniques. And we're going to get into the psychology of it. We're also going to get into, of course, the real tangible, how the heck do you get a wonder dog? But without any further ado, Ryan Matthews, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
I've already been enjoying our little pre-tape talk, so I want to jump right in with you. So were you part of the Army training, or is this like an outside that the Army would bring in to be a dog trainer? Is that a position? Tell me a little bit about the military background and how you found dogs and canine department within it.
Right. So I was on a deployment to Rijeka, Croatia, which is a really beautiful place right on the water in Croatia. And I remember while there on deployment, I had seen these two really cool guys. These are two sergeants in the Army, and they seemed super happy all the time. And I'm like, what's these guys' secret? And next thing you know, I see them doing bite protection training where one of them is wearing the big sleeve and the dog's biting them and this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, wow. That's exactly what I want to do. I've definitely don't have the ideal job here in the Army. And so I interviewed him. I asked if I could talk to him, and I'm like, how the heck do I become a dog trainer like you? And they told me the process. And about 6 months later, next thing you know, I'm going to Lackland Air Force Base, where they train and certify you as a military working dog handler. That was back in 2002, Matt.
Wow. So, you're coming up on 20 years of dog training ability. What's the major difference and I realize practical application for military canine versus civilian is probably going to be something maybe with drugs, with bombs, with different things like that. But as far as the psychology of training the dogs, is there any major differences between military training and civilian training?
On a macro level, there's not a lot of changes. It really, as far as my philosophy, which is known as balanced dog training, which believes in correcting when necessary and rewarding as well. So I believe in both. And you don't always find that in dog training. But on a macro level, the military working dog curriculum also is about rewarding and correction. I think the biggest difference is really that with a military working dog, we are correcting a bit harshly. These are Ferraris. These dogs have extreme drive versus little Hudson does not have the drive of a Belgian Malinois or
He
a
thinks
German
he
Shepherd.
does.
Yeah. He thinks he does. And we're going to definitely get into some of that as well, which is going to be really, really fun. So that's overall, a lot of it's the same, but um, it's also not, because we're dealing with two very different types of animals as it relates to the type of dogs.
Yeah, that makes sense. A little bit like, say, training a horse in your home barn versus training a racehorse. It's going to be the same, as you said, macro principle, but there's a fine-tuned precision that they need or don't need. You might do more or less for different things. So this is really interesting. So how long did you end up serving, and what caused you to want to enlist in the first place?
Wow, that's a deeper story. In short, Matt, I was running away from things here in Southern California that were not very pleasant at all. I'm happy to go deeper if we wanted to, but essentially, I was running away, man. I was running away from something very uncomfortable where I was afraid for my life. And I went to the Army recruiter and I said, I will sign up right now if you give me two things that I really need. And I said, number one, I got to get out here, station me overseas, please, anywhere, preferably Europe. I said, and number two,
Do it tonight.
yeah, do it tonight. And number three, give me military police. You see, Matt, like I figured that if I
Okay,
was
listen,
going,
Ryan, I'm sorry. You cannot be like, I don't need to get into this, but I was running for my life. I need MPs, and you need to station me overseas. What's what's this backstory, man? What, as much or as little as you want to talk about, but I like, what are you running from?
yeah, exactly. What am I running from? I love how you phrase that. And that's exactly what it was. They say that there's that saying where if you can't beat them, join them. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what I had done. So as a teenager, I found a brick of marijuana, which for your audience, if they don't know what that means, it's just a large sum of marijuana in the middle of the street. And that prompted me to get into a drug dealing career where I thought that that's the kind of person I needed to be based upon my circle of friends and even my family members, which are some of them are pretty tough. And so,
And I'm going to pretend I don't know what you're talking about either, as if I never had that experience as a teenager. So go on.
yeah. So again, I'm walking to school. This is in high school, and I find this it's literally about the shape of a brick that you would use for building something, a home or such. And it ended up being marijuana inside. And when I found it with my friend, he's like, "Oh man, let's smoke it." And that's when I showed my true entrepreneur colors. And I said, "No, we're not going to smoke this." I said, "We're going to sell it." And I became addicted. I became addicted to not the drug, but the fact that people needed what I had to offer.
Okay, so you're in high school now, 16,
That's right.
17 years old,
Exactly. Yep.
and you're
16.
breaking bad. You find a pound of pot or some equivalent, and you're off to the races as a drug dealer.
That's right. And, I thought I was cool. And what I also realized now, it took me 30 something years to figure it out, Matt, was that I was always being something that I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was not being my authentic self. I'm actually not a hardcore guy. I've done hardcore things, but I'm really a very kind and loving type of person. And it took me so long to get there. And I'm glad that I'm there. So again, what happened was one day my friend essentially tried to rob me of my own drugs. Now, when he tried to rob me, I attempted to stab him because I was taught you never trust anyone in that kind of world. And when I tried to stab this guy, again, I did not know what I was doing. And the joke is I wasn't cut out for it because I ended up cutting myself while trying to stab this guy when
I
he tried to
wasn't
rob
cut
me.
out. Oh my,
Yeah, it's a good
come
play on
on.
words.
Yeah. So you cut yourself as you're trying. I mean, well, it's like, how many times really, you watch the TV and the movies and it's like, oh yeah, people are always stabbing and shooting, but how often genuinely, even in that line of work, so to speak, are you going to get in this situation to be able to hone a skill? Like, I mean, that's crazy. So you stab yourself. Are you getting in trouble? Are people looking for you now? Is it the cops looking for you? Is it the other turf guys?
Exactly. The other turf guys, I like how
Yeah.
you phrase that, was, he essentially threatened to blow my head off with a shotgun. And so when you said, what were you running from? That's what I was running from. I was running from the fact that I thought they were going to shoot me blow my head off with a shotgun. And that's why I decided to go in as MP, because military police, I knew that I had to change, but I didn't know how to get there from where I was, Matt.
So did you plan on actually enlisting, going into as an MP or growing to an MP?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. So that's when I went to the recruiter and I said, I will seriously join right now. I need to be military police and I need to go overseas. I needed to run and I needed to clean up my act, is how I can rephrase that as well.
So you really knew that, like at that point in this age, are you 18 or?
I was, let's see.
Almost 18?
I was about 18. Yep.
So at 18 years old, you had enough foresight to say, okay, I got to get it sounds a lot like dog training. I got to get the correction. I got to get away from this negativity. I got to get away from this danger and this bad life choice. But how much of it was away from, and how much do you think was towards thinking, I think if I go in the Army, I can get a good life and I can have a good future? Was it like 100% away and you didn't think of that? 80-20, or was it sort of a 50-50? Does that make sense?
It does. And so it was twofold. One is, and this is like, think super profound for all of us, is that our environment really matters. And I didn't feel like I could get to where I needed or wanted to go based upon my environment. And so one was, I knew my environment needed to change. And part of environment was my circle. And so I knew that, should I say, the circle that I was with wouldn't help me get to where I wanted to go.
That's right.
And so I was kind of like wise beyond my years for a teenager. And I guess it was, a gift from somewhere else, an external something that gave me that insight. And I'm so glad that I had some kind of fortitude and wisdom to do something different, because I served 6 years, and in 2005, I volunteered to go to the war as a bomb dog handler. And, it was really tough. And at the same time, I wouldn't take any of it back. I'm glad that I did all of it.
When you were there, so a couple of places you got deployed, definitely, and during the war, which war are we talking about? What's the time frame, and what was probably the longest station for you?
So I was stationed at multiple duty stations well in, but in 2005, I volunteered to go to Mosul, Iraq, with Zito, which is a explosive detection dog.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so weird about being a canine handler is that you're kind of like a special operations person, in that you kind of do your own thing. And so was fortunate enough to work with those guys. And then I would also be tasked out to work with infantry. And at the same time, when you're on your own, you don't have support. So I literally had 0 days of training before combat, which is unheard of. Talk to any military people that went to the war. They go to like a training center and they train for months. I had 0. And that was also very humbling as well. And I was very clueless when I first got there.
When you're over there, are you, just for anyone who doesn't know, and I certainly don't know, you talk about being more independent, and I get that. It's sort of like the specialist is being called in when needed. Do you have your own like canine handler unit, and then it's like, hey, we need 2, we need 1, and then you go off and then you come back when it's done? Or are you stationed like on your own? Do you have?
Yeah, you're brilliant. We have a canine section, and the canine section would make up various branches of the military. And so like we had some Navy guys, we had some Marines, and then we had some Army guys. And so what would happen is—
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So us as a community in Mosul, different units such as special operations and infantry would get a tasking to do some type of raid or some type of search a village or something. And then they would call us and say, we're going out on X, Y, and Z mission. We need canine support. And then the kennel master would say, okay, Ryan, you're going to go out with so-and-so organization. They're going to pick you up tomorrow at 7 a.m. So we didn't even have a vehicle. We would literally get picked. It's like before Uber days. We would get picked up and dropped off at the beginning and end of a mission. And it was so crazy because I had often never met these people before. And here we are trusting each other with our own lives.
Wow. And would it be like you and a Navy guy and a Marine might go, or would they always pick 3 Army guys because it was an Army spot, or would they pick the Navy guys for Navy? How did that work? Because I find it interesting that you'd have, and I want to ask kind of a secondary question to that, all connected, about loyalty, and maybe it's subconscious loyalty. I certainly have many friends over the years that are veterans and have served in different capacities. I myself have never had the honor, but I find that so many people say, the family, the loyalty, the unit, and how does that land when certainly you have the canine unit and maybe it's
Right.
like, is that the first family and Army is second? Is it Army first? And how does that work? Like, and maybe just in your mind, not necessarily, hierarchically,
Right.
however you say that, with the hierarchy of the Army or the military branches, but how does that work in your mind, I guess, and in your heart?
I love that question.
Well,
And
thank you.
well, overseas, things change. When you're garrison, meaning stateside, we give each other a hard time and joke around with the other branches. So it is like Army first, as far as because I was in the Army, right? But overseas, when you're deployed and when you're in combat and you're relying on each other as US military, we're all one for sure. And mission comes first, and we do whatever it takes to get the job done. And so we don't see branches at all. It's irrelevant.
Well, you don't even see them. So it's not like, hey, we're going to get along for the sake of the mission. It's like, okay, it's just, this is the new tribe. This is the new unit.
Yeah, we need each other, man, because when you're getting shot at, you're relying on each other, and so you become soulmates real quick.
I can imagine. Right? Let me pivot just a little bit into sort of civilian life. You come off after 6 years of serving. Did you want to break from dogs? And I guess what it kind of comes to me is I think a lot of times when we do something for a career, sometimes the passion or the love for it drops off. Like I love rock climbing and mountaineering, and a good friend said, you should be a guide. And I thought to myself, the last thing I want to be is a guide and do this for a business, because then come the weekends, the last thing I want to do is go to the mountains. How did you feel about dogs, animals in general, training? Did you have a big respite? Did you think that's my past and then kind of jump back in later? Or did you hit the ground running in civilian clothes and you said, man, give me my dog?
It definitely didn't play out as your guest may think. After after the war, I wanted to go back.
Okay.
But I wanted to go back. And so I should better said, after the war, I got out of the military. I was due to be discharged. And I wanted to go back overseas as a civilian, but I wanted to go back for the money. It was $135,000 a year as a canine handler, and it was purely out of greed. There was a civilian dog handler, and I remember speaking to him, and I was like, "What do you get paid anyways?" Because they didn't work as hard as us. I didn't feel. And he's like, "Yeah, I do about 130, 135 a year." And I was like, "Okay, well, now I know exactly what I need to do," because Matt, I did not grow up with money. And so for me, that was very enticing, right? And so
I get it.
I was going to go, and don't judge me, I'm speaking to your listeners now, I was going to go back overseas with Blackwater. Now, for anyone that knows the world of military and government contracts, Blackwater has had a really bad name. They were kind of viewed as mercenaries.
Right.
And I was 2 weeks away from going to their training, and they changed up the contract at the last minute. And they were smart. And they said, look, when the dog gets tired, you are going to put the dog up and let the dog rest, and then you're going to become an operator. And an operator means mercenary, almost like a foot soldier. And they were smart. They were using me
double duty
much as they could. That's right, exactly. And I said, "Hey, that's fine. What more do I get paid?" They said, "Absolutely nothing." And I walked away from it. So instead, Matt, instead of going overseas back to combat, I took a civilian contract job to be a drug dog handler in the Marshall Islands in Micronesia, which is the South Pacific. And the water is the most beautiful you could ever imagine. Visibility from a boat deep down, 150 feet.
The government of Micronesia says we want a drug handler. And you were like, well, I fit the bill for that. Why? How did you even consider Micronesia of all places? When you were talking about Europe, you grew up in America. Where did that even come on your radar?
Well, when I was stationed in Europe, I really discovered my love for travel, because when I lived in California, I actually never left the state my whole life, right? Until I joined the Army. So I essentially lived in California and then went to Europe and then went to like 20 countries in 2 years' time, traveling and stuff. And so I learned this passion for travel, which is so alive in me. And that's why I wanted to go to Micronesia. Now, one clarifying thing was that I didn't work for the Micronesian government. I worked for the US government, because we have a small army base in the South Pacific. And it was really cool. It's known as Ronald Reagan Ballistic Missile Defense Test Site. So you can kind of imagine what's happening there.
I can slightly imagine. Okay. So, so you do this for a while. When, when are you thinking, I want to do this on my own? Is it kind of that entrepreneur gene, or was it not really about entrepreneurs? It was just more about, hey, maybe I want some more freedom. I want to be able to do it the way I want. I know, you have an amazing, like an online on-demand DIY dog training course that you do. Um,
Right.
but so like, what was it? Hey, I need to get out of doing how many hours, or was it, I want to have a little more control of my life? What brought you to kind of bridging the gap of what you're doing now?
Hmm. My transition from working dogs into civilian dogs was actually from a woman, uh, a very a very special woman. You see, after Micronesia, I drove a ATV over a mountain cliff that all almost killed an ex-girlfriend and me. She was on the back of it. And I essentially moved to Colorado to care for her and help her get back to being as her new 100%. And when I moved to Colorado to care for her, I didn't know what I was going to do for work. And I ended up buying into a dog training franchise for $12,500. And I became immediately successful. I did 10 grand the first month. And so when you ask, you know, what does that transition look like? It was almost by a necessity. That's how I got into pet dog training back in 2008.
Wow. So you say at this point you're putting her first, life and rehabilitation first, and what choice do you have? You got to find work. What work do you know? Training dogs, and all of a sudden here we are.
Exactly. And, you know, that's emotional for me because
I can hear
she
that.
did survive. She did. And this is just a beautiful light in the world, this woman. And I met her in Micronesia, and I'm so honored to have met her and experienced life with her. And I'm sad to say that this was back in 2007, I guess.
Yeah.
But 3 years ago, I got a call one day that she was on another ATV and she died.
No.
And so, yes. And so that's part of where this emotion stems from. And so when I moved to Colorado, we broke up a year later, but always remained great friends. And I've always loved and respected her.
Wow. Where'd you
And
live in Colorado? Just side note.
sure. So I lived in Fort Collins and
Oh,
had a
okay.
business in Loveland right off the main highway. I think it
Yep.
was called Eisenhower. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. That's it. I was just wondering, we might have lived there in the same time, because I grew up in Orange County, California, but lived in South Boulder, Table Mesa area for a good little while, around 2007, I think.
Oh,
So
wow.
interesting
Small
times.
world.
Well, let's pivot from here, and I want to ask just some sort of direct training questions, if I can, for
Please
some of
do.
the
Yeah,
most
I love it.
some of the most common issues. And I'm going to start with the ones I have that I can't get answers to. The first one is uh, whining, because usually it's like everything I read and hear and watch on videos is always dog aggression and walk training and things like that. But I never hear anything about whining. So like, we have
Mm,
this, again, I told you about Hudson the wiener dog, and he'll be a great dog, but then all of a sudden he'll stare at you and start whining. And whether it's
right.
whining because he's bored, whining because he goes into a crate, whining. What's your take on that, psychology wise? What are we doing? What is he doing? Anything you got for me, I'm in.
I got a lot for you, and I'll try to keep it concise so that we can move on to other questions. But I recommend that your listeners grab something to write with, because this is going to be really awesome and valuable.
Here we
So
go.
when it
Rapid
comes to
fire dog training advice. Let's do it.
here we go. So when it comes to vocalizing, such as whining, that's a release of frustration. Dogs release frustration in three ways. One is vocalizing, such as whining or barking. The other is spinning, and then lastly, jumping. And so what's happening is Hudson is trying to express something to you, maybe something that he wants or does not want. And what we do is, and this is going to be a game changer for you, Matt, and then your audience, is if we look at ourselves as well, right? So Hudson is whining at you. Now, what are you doing? And I'm willing to bet almost half my bank account on it. And when Hudson is whining at you, you are most likely looking at Hudson, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so the problem with when we look at the dog, we are actually reinforcing, because if you think about it, Matt, if you and I are in person, when I want to talk to you, I look to you, I look to your eyes. So I am what? Saying I want to communicate. Now, when the animal's whining, we don't want to communicate. We want it to be quiet and go away. And so sometimes by looking away.
So then I try to stare him down.
That's right. Yeah. We
and
don't
say, hey,
do
stop it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's not working out. And so we know it's not working out because Hudson repeatedly does that every single week. So we know that technique is not working. And so number one is let's stop staring at our dogs when we don't want them to, okay, for the whining. Number two, I believe in compromise. So I also assess, does dog need to go potty? Now, I do not allow dogs to say, this is what I need, this is what I want all the time, because then they are leading me. And we all need to lead our dogs. Now, but I will compromise and look into account, have I been acknowledging my dog as I should today, or has my dog been neglected? Is there a need that I need to fulfill within my dog?
That's really good.
That also matters, right? Potty break, food, or something like that. Now, that does not mean that when my dog comes and whines to me, that I get up and go feed my dog. No.
Because now I'm just reinforcing that the way you should get my attention is to whine because it works, right? Just like a kid.
Yes, but if we play chess and not checkers with our dog on a higher level of intellect, then what we do is I say, yes, I will feed you. However, I wait till you go lay down on your own. And then once the dog lays down on their own, like, good choice, go feed them. Right. So I stored it away and saved it for later.
Okay. So quick example. So I'm sitting on the couch, we're minding our own business. He comes up, he looks up and he starts whining. Normally we're going to look down and be like, oh, and then he looks at me and whines again. And then I say, shh, or stop or whatever.
Right.
And then he stops for a second, but he still stares. Now he comes and looks, we're just going to look away and ignore him. And and what if he keeps on what? You just keep ignoring him? Is there anything you don't correct anything? You just ignore it until he eventually wanders off. He lies down on his bed. Then if it's time to eat or time to potty, then I get up and take him then.
Okay. I love how you phrase that. And so what I gave you was phase one, option one. What's cool, Matt, is there's more than one way to train a dog. And so you kind of alluded to it. So thank you for that. You're sharper than most with dogs for sure, is that correction is a great idea. Now, not all of your audience will be open to that, and that's okay. Again, I'm a big believer in correcting for things we don't like and rewarding for things we do like. And so
real quick, just before you get into that, can you just give a distinction between punishment and correction? I think that's the sticking point maybe.
Right. Sometimes it's a play on words and perception about how we view those words. And so the way I work as it relates to punishment or correction, because punishment could be looking away, right? Depending on the dog and their mindset, right? That could be viewed as punishment from the animal. But as it relates to punishment or correction, for me, it's about how can I stop the behavior with the least amount of effort possible and it sticks. See, I can cease a behavior, but when it repeats again an hour later, a minute later, or next week, then it hasn't landed in the animal's brain. Okay. And so that's why the correction does need to have a certain level of understanding and almost call it seriousness for it to stick. So the behavior does not continue to repeat. Okay. And that's where people lose off. Now, how can we do that? Well, there's many ways. As it relates to your example, Matt, you can use a shaker can, which is just an empty can with some pennies inside, or quarters if you're rich. It's empty, tape on top, and you shake that thing like a little rattlesnake sound, okay? That may work for Hudson for a week, but then he may get immune to it and not care. And it all depends upon the dog. Another option is you could do like a spray bottle, should I say, with just some water inside.
And we have done that, and he responds amazing, where I think we maybe sprayed him once with a light mist. He didn't like it. And now if I just pick it up and aim it at him, he stops.
Right. And so then the secret then, Matt, is you put one of those spray bottles in every room in the house. And that way, now here's how we phase out the bottle.
That's genius.
Is the way you phase the bottle out, this is next level genius, is when Hudson makes a good choice. That's how I like to phrase it. It's like, hey, good choice. So what would be a good choice in the instance of your example? That is, he chooses to be quiet. Okay. And so when he chooses to be quiet, you're mellow, but you give a very high value reward, such as cheese or chicken or dried liver or something like that.
Ooh, high value. So not just like a little dog bone or something.
No milk bone, not high enough value. And so that's why the next phase is you reward when impressed. And now if you think about like a surprise and delight, which we have one for your audience, right? And so if we wow your audience, they're like, wow, I really want to get to know this Ryan guy. I want more. Same holds true with your dog, right? As it relates to positive reinforcement. And so why give milk bone when we could give something more valuable? And it's like, wow, that's a surprise and delight. Didn't expect that coming. What did I do for you to give me that? Then you get the dog's wheels start to spin. Then that's called offering behavior, right? Where their dog starts problem solving on their own. And then that's a very high level of dog training. It's very fun.
Man, this is genius. Again, what I love is we talk about something that, and I've studied this, to the extent that a civilian dog owner, non-trainer studies, right? And I understand the basic concepts, maybe even better than some, worse than others. But this is genius where it's like just that clarity, those little distinctions of the high value reward
Yes.
and exactly when to give the high value reward. And I'm assuming this
Mm,
goes with affection and everything else. Can we talk about the other major classic, which is dog aggression? And I think our dog's a good example of this. I've had dogs that were wonderful. I've had dogs that had major issues, but usually in my life, at least, it's been this gradual, I take the dog for a walk and we keep going. And we've even taken Hudson since he was, 2, 3 months old, whatever year, whatever week it was, to the dog park regularly, multiple times a week. We try our very best to introduce him to people, and he was playing wonderfully. But little by little, he started having issues with bigger dogs and puppies specifically.
mm.
And he's just starting, like, I see those signs, right? He's starting to become, "Oh, I can't trust you. Why are you starting to flip out a little more?" And they're going beyond playing. Can you speak to how the aggression shows up? And if you still have time, I want to keep going on this. We're a little bit
I do.
over, but that's going to be just fine. We'll probably break it into 2 parts on the radio. That's cool. And one big podcast. So, how does dog aggression come about? How can we prevent it? Maybe A, and then B, when we know we're getting some or we have it, what do we do about it?
Wow. So this answer is going to be going way deeper than what you and your audience potentially had thought it would go. And
Wherever you want to go.
it's going to be really eye-opening. And so you said some really great things and you alluded to some beautiful things as well. And so aggression works like this on a macro level. Aggression stems from an invasion of space. And so Hudson is fine when a dog is a mile away. Hudson is fine when a dog is 100 yards away. Hudson may not be fine when the dog is 10 inches away. Okay.
Is
So
it
it's,
possession or is it spatial or is it both?
well, we could argue that possessive and spatial is the same
Okay.
because it doesn't matter if it's a bone, food, a dog bed, or get out of my personal bubble, I'm laying down. It's an invasion of space, meaning the animal is possessive of their space, right?
Okay.
Now, you also said something about where taking to dog park and that this aggression or however we want to phrase, maybe reactivity, maybe it's not aggression,
That's a good word.
has progressed. And there's a difference. So reactive just means I don't want to cause a problem. I'm just a bit worked up because I'm too stressed.
What's
See,
interesting is I think he started a little more like that, where he was always fine, but every now and again there was this other dog who
yes,
clearly had some kind of weird issue, and then he'd come over and bother him, and then as a little dog he'd just go, "Hey," and he put him in his place, and then he would stop and go back to normal, which I thought was fairly healthy. But then he started being the one who I'm like, I got to go get him.
right. Now, here's the thing is you're hitting it all right on for sure. Here's
Am
the
I?
secret. Here's the secret,
Yeah,
everyone.
what's the secret?
The secret is that we need to avoid dog parks. And that's not what we want to hear. Okay. Now, here's why.
I love you for that.
Here's why. Number one, you have great intentions. You want to get your dog exercise. I love that, respect that, value it. I teach dogs to run treadmills. Exercise is so important. Number two, most of the people in the dog park are on their cell phone.
And we think we want to socialize them is really the idea.
Correct. Yeah. Now, yes, or it's a socializing thing. Now, here's the problem is you have a group of people who are responsible dog owners that I misphrased it. You have a group of people that want to do the right thing by their dog. They just don't know what they don't know. And so you have a group of people that have their dogs off leash, which is uncommon for them. And nearly no one will have off leash control, as in don't do that when you're
That's
off leash,
correct.
such as come here while you're off leash. Nearly no one will have control. Number two is nearly no one knows enough about dog behavior and psychology to assess when the play is getting out of hand. And number three is you have a group of people that nearly no one knows how to break up a dog fight because dog fights happen at in dog parks every single day. And trust me, that's how I started. Was I studied dog parks.
Well, and I'll tell you, and I've watched those too. I mean, I watch people and I cringe because all of a sudden the two dogs start getting into it. And then here you got two people are reaching in with their hands and trying to grab the dogs by the collar. And it's like, what a way to get bit. Not a great idea.
Correct.
So
Smart.
stay out of, oh, and then what about this too? And I think like that pack mentality, I always think I'm sitting in the dog park and maybe there's 10 dogs. I go, gosh, here's this kind of temporary pack. And I watch how sometimes it'll become calm. Maybe there's 6 dogs and they sorted each other out and everyone's okay. Some
Mhm.
dogs play, some dogs stay at their own, but they're all just kind of working themselves out for like 10 minutes.
Right.
A new dog comes in and all of a sudden you have a whole new pack. And then a
Right.
dog leaves, then another dog comes. And it's like it's constantly changing. Does
Yes.
that create like levels of anxiety for the whole temporary pack? If that's even a right way to say that?
It's a great way to say it. And we could also say it as it's a shift in the energy
Shifting the energy. Yeah.
because like we all got to know each other and we have our own vibe now as a unit. But now we just brought something external into us and we need to know what this is all about. Now, that other dog, oh man, this is good. The other dog got out of the car and it's pulling the owner to the dog park. And so it's really hyper. It's really excited to go do zoomies as soon as it gets in. Whereas everyone else had run around that's inside. They've already checked things out. They've sniffed the area. The other dog is ready to go sniff the area. It's ready to meet everyone. Everyone inside is already met. And so you have this really excited dog coming in, and these other dogs that have already kind of figured it all out. And so this new dog coming in has shifted and changed up the energy. And that's
Mm,
can be a good thing, but not always. You see
okay.
how it can be really just changed up by through one fundamental change. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So we avoid dog parks. We take them for walks.
Yes. But they need socialization, right? And so
Right. Yeah. So let's go back to that aggression socialization piece.
yeah, so we definitely must have socialization. And what you can do is if you see someone at the dog park, let's say you're like, yeah, I don't care what Ryan says, I'm going to keep going. Well, how about we compromise? Because I really like to compromise with dogs and people. So what does it look like if we were to say, you know, I've seen this person coming often and their dogs chill, they seem nice, they always say hello. Why don't we reach out to that person and maybe a couple of others and set up our own private play date where we know the dogs and we know the people, we like the energy of both. Now it's a positive experience versus a bunch of strangers meeting up, don't know anyone's energy, then things can potentially get bad. So I'm not discouraging socialization. I'm discouraging unhealthy socialization.
That's a great distinction. Really good idea. I think that fear is that I'm like, if my dog is starting to act aggressive or weird, I feel like, gosh, I'm scared. So I know I want to withdraw and keep him at home
Yes.
more. But at the same time, I know that's not good for him. I don't want him to be that dog who's stuck at home looking out the window thinking everybody's the enemy. So
Right.
make some play dates. That's great. And then what else can we
Yes.
do? What else can we do to sort of shift that spatial, the possession, I guess, get them more friendly?
Get them more friendly, but also have more awareness and be your own dog's advocate. So, what I
Hmm.
mean by have more awareness is be next level responsible dog owner. Learn dog behavior and psychology. I'm a big believer in reading body language. So, I teach people how they can reach body language in actually the online course. And there's like 10 videos specifically about reading body language. And it goes deeper than, hey, that wagging tail, the dog's happy, because a wagging tail does not mean happy. It can. A wagging tail means excitement and there's good and
Ah,
bad excitement in life. And so I teach you how to read the entire dog's body language. And that matters because we need to be our dog's advocate. So when Hudson is feeling triggered or stressed, it's our job to recognize it in our babe and then having enough as a skills as a handler to get other dogs to back away. So I live close to the beach here in Orange County, and my dog and I, we run on the beach often. And when dogs are being a bit rude to my dog, or if they charge him in a certain way, I know it will trigger him. I use my spatial awareness, and this is one of the secrets, to get that other dog to back away. I use my own presence to get the dog to back away. And so that's part of me being Zeus's advocate, not let Zeus getting stressed out, because I know that that dog's energy is going to bother Zeus. Zeus wants a particular type of dog to interact with as it relates to personality and energy. And I facilitate that. And that's exactly what we do on our private meetups, like meetup.com, or our private play dates. And so that's something that we can all do is set our dogs up for success, is to know how to read the body language when the other dog's going to be triggering and when our own pet gets triggered. We got to be, be their biggest fan.
can I tell you, man, that Ryan, is really nice to hear from an elite dog trainer like yourself that's worked with so many thousands civilian and military dogs to say that your personal dog can get triggered. In my head, I always think, I think of like a golden doodle or a Labrador, one of the, say, the mild mannered breeds, quote
Sure.
unquote. And I think, oh, whoever my dog is, my responsibility is that I should get him. He should be the ultimate happy, let everything go, but it's like nobody's like that. And to know that no humans are like that, I don't think even healthy for me to say, I'll let any behavior go. There's certain
Correct.
behavior with humans that I'm going to go, whoa, what are you doing, buddy? Get out of
That's
here.
right. That's right.
Right. So you're
Yep.
saying it's okay for dogs to kind of be choosy with the energy and with the personalities, but you
Yes.
want to advocate so you support what's healthiest for them and helping to avoid or eliminate the things that are unhealthy. Is that fair to say?
That's 100%. And friends, let's take it a step further and say
Let's.
this, that not all dogs want to socialize, but we want them to. That's part of the dream that we had when we first got the dog, was to go and play and be social. But you know what? Not all people are social, and dogs can be the same way. Okay. And so do not force it. That's why we need to know how to read the body language and just know the essence of your animal. Okay, so that we can give them the best life possible. Maybe your dog's totally content with not meeting other dogs, or maybe your dog really craves it. And if your dog craves it, we want it to be healthy and balanced. That's all.
Hudson craves it. I like that though. But there's Sergeant, the other wiener dog, 2 blocks over. We met at the dog park that my wife is connected with. That's
Cool.
wonderful. So we can
Perfect.
go and play
Yep.
date with them. We have friends a couple blocks the other way with a dog, Brody, who's a big dog, but they seem to get along really well. So hanging out with them just together or in the house or something is a great way to do it rather than the dog park. I love that. And then last thing is, what if, like, say on leash aggression, say we're going for a walk and he starts,
Yes.
there's a dog across the street. Rawr, 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 rawr. What do we do about that?
Let's address that. And then also, when you just shared what you had, I need to just point out that we would want the dogs to meet on neutral ground. So, what
Ah,
I would propose is we go for a walk together as a pack, then we go inside the house or the backyard. That's very, very important. And then, Matt, I wanted to actually do something. I don't know that I've ever done this before on an interview. Is I want to give you a gift that I give the exclusive people in my membership, where I want you, if you would like to, send me a video of the play. You send the video, I will assess the video and I will break down what's happening for you. If you send me that video of that play, I want to make sure that Hudson's getting the proper fair play that's a win for everybody. So I wanted to give that as a gift of essentially me assessing a socialization video for you. Would
oh
that
my
work?
gosh, that's so kind. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
man.
Yeah, so that's
Now,
something you do in your members group, which, by the way, we should probably plug and check this out. The website is worldofdogtrainingonline.com. And if you go to
exactly.
worldofdogtrainingonline.com/DIY, it'll be in the show notes if you see the show on demand. You can get a whole free week of DIY dog training on demand. There's an e-course Ryan's created, as you talked about and alluded to. There's a whole membership community. There's a course for it. There's deep, deep training on this. If you have a dog or you want to get a dog in any capacity, no matter whether they have problems or not, this is something that's going to be so huge and beneficial. So make sure you go check that out again, worldofdogtrainingonline.com/DIY. And you get a whole free week. Check it out and enjoy it for a week and make the changes. And I think you're going to fall in love with the community.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. Thank you for that. Now, let's address this whole leash pulling thing. Now, here's the thing is I talk about, and we mentioned this in the course, that the walk starts in the house. You see what we do, Matt, is we're like, are you ready to go for a walk? Are you ready? Are you ready? So we hype the dog up. And then we're like, oh man, dog's so dang hyper going on the walk. It's like we conditioned it, friends, because it's fun to see our dogs hyper,
It is,
right?
especially
So
when
it's
they're
this
cute.
balance. Exactly. It's this balance of, all right, well, if we're going to condition it, do we really want to have this end result? So just make an informed decision, right, on our actions. So if I hype the dog up, just know I'm setting the wrong tone for the walk. So if you're okay with the dog pulling, maybe don't do it. If you're fine with pulling, no problem, right? So
That makes
number
sense.
one starts in the house with dog being calm. Okay. Number two is make the dog wait at the door. So you're the first one out, sets the tone for the walk as well. Now, there's particular ways to hold the leash so that it feels nice and relaxed for both you and the dog. Now, a lot of us hold the leash like a bird's nest. That's not going to be a good start. And the other part is when we encounter a distraction, what do we tend to do, especially with the bigger dogs? We use our left hand or our opposite hand that's not holding the leash, and we grab closer down to the collar or the buckle, right? And so when we do that, think of be the dog for a second, everyone. Be the dog. Imagine what is the signal we're sending to the dog. Be on the receiving end of that. Okay. So the other hand grabs that leash even more so. We have conditioned that something is about to happen. right?
Yeah, so
We said
now
something.
it's anticipation.
That's right.
It's we're also getting our energy. Like I get my energy a little more tense, a little
That's right.
more anxious because I'm like, oh no, I don't want him to bark and go crazy again because he always does that. So
Yes.
now I'm more tense, and then I'm gonna pull,
Uh-huh.
and I'm gonna have more tension on the leash and everything. So he's gonna feel that.
Yes. Now pulling is what the public does. That's Matt, you and the other dog
Absolutely.
people that are not dog handlers yet, but you all can be very soon.
Yeah.
And so the secret, Matt, rather than a pull, is what I developed. It's called loose pop loose, and it's a technique that you give a leash correction. Remember, correct when the dog needs to do something better, and reward when impressed. And so I teach you all how to be proactive and not reactive, so that we can catch the dog before they begin to lunge, before they begin to whine or bark towards another dog. I teach you how to read the signals ahead of time. Number one, and then the other part is the loose pop loose technique. And so really that looks like this. The leash needs to be loose. It cannot be taut. Then you snap it with your wrist. It's a very snappy wrist action reaction, should I say? And it's very quick and dynamic. And then the animal's like, oh, wow. Now, it also depends upon the type of collar that the dog is wearing. Okay. So there's different types of collars. There's the flat buckle collar, there's harnesses, then there's choke chains and prong collars. And so the type of collar, this is kind of a more in-depth explanation that we don't have time to get into, but I'm happy to help your audience figure that out as well for their specific dog. But the collar matters. We tug the leash in a snappy manner called loose pop loose, not a pull. Pull is going to just create an oppositional reflex. You pull back, dog's going to pull forward. You've seen it time and time again. And then the other part is to be proactive and not reactive, and understanding how to read the dog before they start lunging or barking. Okay. Now, let's say that we got our dog calm. That's when we reward. And again, it's very high value to be like, I am so proud of you. I'm so impressed with you. And now there's one piece that is often not talked about, and that is we are concerned with how it's going to go. But what happens if we start to walk with our arms relaxed, with our chin up and our chest out, and we're confident that our dog is going to make a right choice? What happens if we shift our mindset? And this works with our own personal life as well, right?
It
If we
does.
shift our mindset and have more confidence in ourselves and our dog, then you'd be amazed at what can happen. For me, it's like intuitive kind of stuff. It's almost feels spiritual, and it's very unique. It's, I call, the highest level and the finesse in the art of dog training. It's very fun. And but to get there, sometimes it takes a better knowing of our animals and knowing how to read them. And so I'm happy to facilitate that for those that are ready.
And you're really, I mean, you're just taking on the psychology of expectation of this is how it is. This is the reality I'm creating in a way.
There you go.
And I feel it, I know it, and I'm going to walk as if. And what it sounds like is, the dogs can sense the energy, and they might not do that, right? They might not be exactly what you expect them to be, but if you expect it, would you say they're much more likely to fall in line with that energy?
100%. Because number one, our dogs are followers. They look to us for guidance. Number two, and this can highlight everything we talked about with leash. Just remember this, that energy runs down leash.
Okay.
That's all you need to remember. Everything runs down leash. Starts from you, goes down.
That's really
leash.
good. That's the most succinct way to explain all of dog energy and psychology.
There you go, man.
Down leash. Awesome. Well, listen, I've kept you much too long. Thank you for jumping in as much as you have with all the questions and everything. Final question, man. Looking back at everything that you do, if there's anything that you could change in your life, any experiences that you would go and redo differently, would you change anything? Or
I
would you
would.
leave it all the same?
I would. And in the past, I've answered it as no, I wouldn't. And for today, where my mindset is, the one thing I would want to change is that I had wished that I was of more service sooner in my life. I waited until I was like 35 years old, and I wish I was sharing my gifts and talents sooner with people.
Man, that's well said. I appreciate it. Well, Ryan Matthews, everybody. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Matt. It was a great time.
All right, guys, that's the show for this week. So listen, that was Ryan Matthews. Wow. We went way extra on time. So I hope you love that. I just want to keep on going because look, if you want to stop halfway through because you don't have a dog, all good. You got a good story. But man, if you have a dog or you ever will, or you have a friend with a dog, you got to be careful about how you give the advice. But most people, if they have an issue with their pet, they're pretty open to some simple solutions, and Ryan is full of them. So you can follow Ryan on Facebook and LinkedIn at I am Ryan Matthews. I am Ryan Matthews on Facebook and LinkedIn. And then grab a free week of dog training DIY. Join me in the course. I'm going to be in there as well and checking this out and trying to get Hudson to obey, trying to get him to make him stop whining. We're going to reward him with high value treats for high value behavior and spray bottle in every room. There's some good stuff in here. And again, you can get that at worldofdogtrainingonline.com/DIY. That's it for me this week. I am out. Get out there and have a great weekend. Stay driven. Do what you do. And as in the words of Ryan Matthews, be of service as early as you can in life and in your business. All right. Love you guys. I'll see ya. Bye. Bye-bye.